To our Monday Soul Deliciousness. Give you a second to hop on. I'm just going to make sure that I got all my stuff going here. So welcome. If this is your first time joining our tribe, my suggestion to you is to go hop onto my YouTube page and my links up in the comments. That's the easiest way to find me. You'll get a notification every time I go live and post a new video. So we're going to talk about giving up control, which I will tell you, I am a complete expert in this field, as in the past, I've been a complete compulsive control freak. And never in my life did I realize until probably, like, I don't even know, maybe a year ago, the actual negativity that was coming from me needing to have this desire to control everything. So if this is your first time here, welcome, welcome. I love pumpkins. There you go. My name is Amy Elizabeth Jorgensen, and I have basically dedicated my entire past few years to aligning with how in the world do I get out of a really icky spot in life. So if you follow me on my Facebook platform, you'll see that I posted a video today of my daughter, and that was probably the turning point for me. And, you know, sometimes you have to get to that space where you feel that you are just in complete darkness and there is absolutely nowhere for you to go. You literally are at that space of just wanting to give up. And so that's why I'm here. That's my purpose, guys. That's my passion, is because been there, done that. I know how you're feeling. And I want to always come and give you something that you can use right off the bat to help you understand. Because when we become aware of why we're doing certain things, or we become aware of things that we subconsciously do, because usually cognitively, you're pretty aware of the things you do. But there's all these things that we do that we're not really aware that we're doing. So that's what we're here for. Okay, so let's talk about this desire to control things. So I used to run every possible scenario for every single thing that I was going to do. And I'm going to explain to you in a second why that is such a non-productive behavior. Because I would have told you, no, like, this is why I'm successful in life, is because I run every possible potential scenario that can happen to me. Therefore, I'm prepared for everything. And I've gone through every possible, um, solution to my problem. So I felt like I was like entering the battlefield, like ready to go. But I'm going to explain to you why that's actually not the way that you want to do stuff. So, first of all, let's like kind of digest this. Like, why do we have this desire or this need to control things? So a couple of reasons. If you work with me as a client and you've done some of my sessions where I do what's called ELV, which is Elevate Life Vibration, or you're one of my practitioners, like, you know that we got to get to the root. We got to get to the root of the problem. Like, why are we having these feelings of control? Because we can work on, doing these techniques every day to help us to get into this space where we don't need to control. We bring awareness to the space, but we also have to get rid of the roots, right? It's like when I was a kiddo, helping grandma pull out stuff from the garden, working on the flower beds with my mom, which is really funny because my grandmother and my mother absolutely love gardening and I despise it. If you've been to my house, you've watched my videos, you know that I have no lawn and I have no flower beds because I just literally live in a country farm field. It's just how I like it. Anyway, but my grandma, what I say, you don't just pull the weed out, right? You can't pull the top of the weed off because, as you know, what happens, like, the root's still there. So it's going to grow back and you're, wasting your time plucking and pulling. If you don't get down to the root. I don't know what my streaming thing has got going on because I can't see any of you. So if you leave a comment, just know I love you, but I can't reply because I don't know what's going on with my stuff. Okay. So, negative core beliefs. Those are one of the underlying foundations that create the space for why we have to control stuff. So I'm going to give you an example. A negative core belief: I'm not safe when I don't have control. So that's one of those subconscious things. Like you don't even realize potentially that you're doing it. I'm not safe when I don't have control. It's a negative core belief that you have. Or when I don't have control, I feel vulnerable, right? And you don't like that space. Or we can align with things like toxic phrases. So a toxic phrase can be something that you read. It can be something that someone says to you. A toxic phrase can be something, just think of it as you hear it, you see it, it becomes a belief because it's a phrase. So I'll give you an example of one of mine. Giving up control aligns with the fact that I've been told all my life you're a type A personality. Because I'm very opinionated, I'm very strong-willed. I have that, inner fire, which I tell people all the time. If you want to see the sweet side of me, right, you have to get into a place where I feel like I'm safe around you. And then you see the nice, then you see the part of me that is, the sweet side. Because otherwise, if I don't feel safe, I'm like super quick to put on my armor because I have boundaries and they're pretty prevalent. I'm just checking something. Okay. So those are the underlying issues that make it so we have these desires. Then you can use this with anything. It doesn't matter if you're like, yeah, having to control things isn't really resonating with me. Think you can change this to any type of a characteristic that you have that is controlling to you, because it's not just giving up control, and you can, interlay like different things that you're doing. So I'll show you. So here we go. Running every possible scenario. Let me tell you why this is an issue, because you actually have, like, what's the little guy's name in Pinocchio? Jiminy Cricket or something, right? Think about Pinocchio. It's been a while since I've seen the show, but right, he has his little guy hanging out on his shoulder. I'm pretty sure his name is Jiminy Cricket. Anyway, he's a cricket. And what does he do, right? He's kind of like there, like, oh no, Pinocchio, don't do this, don't do that, don't lie. You have this internal GPS going on, this internal intuitive source, which is why I love teaching human design. It's because you learn which one of your centers is the most prominent. And then it allows you to understand, like, when I'm faced with a decision, I can immediately align with the decision and what choice I should make. So I don't have to sit and like mull over it. Like, right. I used to be that person that was, I would sit and just like think about it all night long. And then I'm not sleeping. And then I wake up in the morning. Even when I finally fall asleep, what happens? Like the moment you wake up, you're like running this in your mind. Like, what am I worried about? It's almost like you have to remind yourself, like, ooh, I feel a little too comfortable. I feel a little too at peace. And so your brain starts going like, ooh, I know there's some anxiety in there somewhere, because we get really addicted to it, especially when you wake up in the morning. It sounds crazy, but you get so addicted to these stress release hormones. So when you've been asleep, and it's possible too to even sleep with anxiety, but you wake up, and if you have this comfort, calm feeling, it's almost like it's unsettling. And so then you bring the anxiety back so that you can release those hormones, because that initial fight or flight response that you get feels really good, because it's giving you that energy to like, boom, take it on. Because, right, you're supposed to be running. You have fight or flight to run from something, a predator that's trying to get you, or a situation that you feel unsafe in. So initially it feels really, really good. Okay. So sometimes we have a hard time hearing our intuitive source. And so that's why I'll direct you real quick over to my Soul Center group. And oh, by the way, because you're watching this, I have this really amazing human design course that you can take. And I'll just give you a little secret. If you type in the word soul centered, one word, capitalize the S, capitalize the C. If you didn't quite get that, send me a message. I'll hook you up. I'll give you $130 off of my course because I love it that much. And it literally will change your life as far as being able to hear that decision maker. It takes a little bit of practice, but you can get to the point where I used to stress out so much when I had to make a decision. And now I just sit and think, that's the answer. Boom, bada bing. And you're not wrong because you're aligned and balanced. So let's come back to this. Why is it an issue to run all the scenarios in your head like I was doing? Because I thought I was like on top of my game. I was so smart. If I run every possible scenario to my situation, then nothing can surprise me and I'll know exactly how to respond. Therefore, I cannot be wrong in this. Here's what the problem is. Let's go to a space. Let's say that you pick scenario A and you are coming up with a solution based off of something that's happened in your past, because that's your reality. You can't come up with a solution unless you tie it to something that you know, because that's just how our cognitive brain works. So if I come up with a solution, let's say that I am making a decision about work, and in the previous, this is something that's happened to me. So I'm attaching situation number one to this specific thing in the past. What happens? I remember it. I have an emotion associated with that. And that emotion, in order for me to recall it, actually responds as a chemical reaction. So even though I'm not back in that space and that time, guess what? My mind doesn't differentiate that. So if I feel that emotion, I actually relive it. Makes sense, right? Because you're like, yeah, that does make sense. Because every time I go back to this time when I got in a car accident, when, XYZ happens, like I'm feeling it and I'm reliving that. And that's why it's because you're releasing those chemicals. So when you see me post something like I did today with a picture of Kinley, it's sometimes difficult for me to explain to people that, like, I can talk about my daughter and I can talk about her death and I can talk about the fact that I carried her for 2 hours in a car to the mortuary. It's because I've cleared that, right, from anchoring me back into the past. Does it mean that I forgot about it? No, because when we clear emotions and we clear that chemical response, it doesn't mean we forget about it. It just means that I can think about that and I don't get that overwhelming, like, just icky feeling of bringing it all back, because I've worked on clearing that from my space. So that's the reason you can't go through every scenario, because you're going through every single possible past experience that you've had and you're releasing those chemicals and you're reliving it. And I mean, think about that. Let's say that I'm going through a decision and I'm reliving like 6 things that happened to me. And, maybe in one of them I was angry, and one of them I was worried, and one of them I had lots of anxiety, and one of them I was feeling overwhelmed, and one of them I was helped. That's a lot. That's a lot of chemical reactions going on in your body that you're like spurring off. So if you're like me and you're an overthinker and you're doing this all the time, you're oxidizing your body away, literally. And so bring awareness to this fact that you don't need to control things. Okay. And if you follow me and you hop into some of my freebies, you'll see that I do a lot about teaching you how we don't want to control, you want to attract. Why do I need to control things if I attract exactly what I'm after? I don't need to control anything, because I'm aligned that I'm going to actually attract exactly what I need. And therefore, I don't need to control anything. And that's a beautiful space to live in. So I'm actually going to be posting a video in my Blocked Emotions page on Facebook, and also in my group that's attached to that. So if you're in there, you'll see it. But I'm going to talk about gene expression, because we're so taught that I'm born with this. This is my DNA. I'm predisposed to have heart disease, whatever it is, because that's what you've been told. And when you're told something, just like when I was told, well, you're a type A personality, therefore you can be crazy and, burn the village down. It's not the case. So it's your environment that creates your genes to express a specific way. So when you're in an environment where you're really stressed out, you're basically creating this gene expression. So you think of it as like turning your genes off or on, like they're there. But if I'm living in a space where I'm peaceful and I'm comfortable and I'm not stressed out, I'm not influencing those genes to react. But when I'm being stressed out and I'm being in this space of like chaotic and crazy, I'm turning those genes on, man, and they're pumping. And then proteins and cells can't replace themselves correctly. And then before you know it, I have all these symptoms. And suddenly it's like, well, I have a disease. And that's how that works. And so I'm going to do a whole video on that. So you want to hop in there if you want to take advantage of that. Okay, so there we go. You don't want to do this cycle over and over again of overanalyzing, being compulsive, because you're anchoring yourself back to those points in the past, and you cannot progress. So I'm going to tell you how you make this magic happen. Okay. We use systems, and I'm not saying you have to use my system, but use whatever system you want. We use systems like ELF. because we clear away the toxic phrases. We clear away the negative core beliefs. We clear away the emotions that are anchoring us to those spaces that we keep going back to when we're like, I just live in this freaking cycle, right? And then we use human design because you've got to be your authentic self. I can't even express that enough. If you are not being your authentic self, do not expect things to happen for you the way that they're supposed to. So I had somebody in my family a little while ago say, I can't stand watching you on social media because you're so fake. And I was like, cool, right? So then my like sassiness is like, stop watching me on social media then. But here's the problem, okay? My family was around me during my life when what was I doing? Trying to be the person that everybody wanted me to be, okay? So when my family's like, you're not the person that I grew up with, you're right, I'm not, because I wasn't living in my authentic space. I hated myself. Absolutely hated myself. I hated the way my body looked. I hated my hair. I hated everything about myself. So you're right. I am not that person anymore because this is my authentic self. So I had to really learn that if my family doesn't align with who I am right now today, that's coolio, because I'm not going to be anybody that I'm not in my authentic space. And you kind of have to own that. Human design helps us to realize who we really are so that you can align with that. So you can make decisions. You can realize that you're doing something because that's who you are, instead of being like, well, I don't like that I do that, so I better change it, right? When people are like, get out of your comfort zone, there is some truth to that. But for some of you, getting out of your comfort zone is not the best way for you to accomplish things. It really isn't. So you want to be the salmon swimming up the stream? Like my son and I had this talk this morning, and I was like 6 in the morning, and I was like, dude, welcome to being an adult, right? It's hard. And he's like, no, really. And I said, this is what it's like. Literally. I said, I feel for you, man. I'm like, my heart goes out to you because I know, I remember being your age. It's hard. You feel like you're in this like rubber life raft in the middle of the ocean. You don't have a freaking anchor. You're in your underwear. There's a gigantic hurricane. You have no food. You have no idea where you're going. And oh, by the way, you're allergic to salt water. And he laughed, right? And he's like, pretty much. And I was like, no, really, that is pretty much how it feels at times. Sometimes people are like, oh, I don't want to be older. But I'm telling you what, as I told my friend today, I was like, dude, the space that I'm in right now, there's not a question in my mind about when I'm doing things right or wrong. And I love that because I've made it through. You've crawled through the mud on your hands and knees so that when you get to this point, you're like, nope. I mean, even when it comes to dating, right? Like, I'm not going to change myself for anybody. Somebody pipes off about how stupid my pumpkins are. It's like, you're gone, dude. It's a great space to be in. So like, own it. Okay. So we do ELF to clear things from the past. We do human design so we understand ourselves right now in this moment. How can I align with myself? And then guess what we do? We create our future. And you got to do more than manifesting the traditional way. I'm going to do a whole course on this because, wow, I was doing it wrong. And I was like, this doesn't really ever work for me. And then I realized how to manifest correctly, and boom, bada bing. You can bring anything that you desire into your space. So there we go. All right. There's your soul deliciousness. I have no idea what's wrong with my restream because I can see no one. So either I just talk to myself for 20 minutes or something. But there you go, you guys. Make it happen. It's your own reality to mold. And I hope